Good afternoon and welcome to the Exhibitions Means Business Update. Before we get started, please be sure to note your chat question box on the side of your screen. This is where you will want to submit any questions that you may want answered during today's webinar, and we will get to those as we can throughout the next hour. Now I will turn it over to Carrie Farinack with CNTV and IAEE Chair-elect.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I want to welcome everyone here. We're so excited that you joined us. This is a webinar about Exhibitions Means Business, and we will be going through some specific legislation, and we will also be talking about some collaboration too, so you'll know what this campaign's been up to and how we're working with other groups at the moment. I'm quite excited to introduce our panel. So I'd like to start with Marie Brown. Say hi, Marie. She is with Reed Exhibitions. We're really excited to have you with us. Thank you so much. David Dubois, a man who often needs no introduction, President and CEO of IAEE. David, thanks so much for being with us. Bob McLean from the great state of Texas. Hi, Bob. Bob's with PPAI and also current chair of IAEE. And advocacy guru, Roger Rickard with Voices in Advocacy. Roger, how you doing? Welcome to all of you. We are really excited that you're here. And really, we're here to talk so much about how exhibitions really do mean business. And especially now more than ever. There's no question that this is vital to our industry and vital to the future. So let's start with Bob in terms of kind of what the campaign means and where we're headed. Bob.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. And I want to thank the panelists for joining us and thank all of you who are participating in this important event. As chairperson of IAEE, I want to welcome you to the Exhibitions Mean Business Update. Your attendance tells me that you care about our industry and want to learn about what IAEE is doing to advance and protect our industry and hopefully what you can do to help. Being the exhibition and events industry chairperson in the year there were no trade shows was not how I expected my year to go. But as in all challenging situations, it is inspiring to watch how people and companies step up in difficult and uncertain times. I am so proud to represent an organization that has done so much for our industry in such a short period of time. I am grateful for the IAEE staff and volunteers for the hard work they have done. Knowing that an overwhelming number of participants attended our virtual exhibitions day last month gives me confidence in the strength of our industry and our resilience. So what is EMB? I want to start by pointing out that advocacy is one of the only three key pillars in IAEE's strategic plan, and a big part of this is achieved by the Exhibitions Mean Business campaigns. EMB began in 2011 as a way to form a collective voice to promote the positive economic impact of trade shows. It exists to represent what's important to IAEE members and the industry by sharing data, research, and case studies with policymakers, business professionals, educators, and young professionals. Together, we must continue to drive the conversation. The trade shows are where business gets done. As IAEE developed its EMB campaigns, it quickly recognized that decisions made by elected officials at the local, state, and federal levels directly impacts our industry and in turn impacts the communities in which we live. So in 2014, IAEE started Exhibitions Day, which is an annual legislative fly-in which has gained significant momentum over the years. Congressional offices and their staff now recognize IAEE and our industry. Our efforts have been instrumental, especially this year when over 625 professionals participated in getting out our message in front of lawmakers. To help further that message, sharing personal stories of your life and career in the trade show business is vital to driving home the message that exhibitions mean business. I would strongly encourage everyone on this webinar to become an EMB ambassador. It's super easy. You go to the advocacy tab on the IAEE website and find the Get Involved link to sign up. Chances are, if you are on this call, you are most likely already doing the work. We want to have a way to draw upon your expertise and connections when needed, and the EMB Ambassador Program allows us to do that. So why is all this important? The B2B exhibitions industry contributes more than $100 billion to the US GDP each year. trade shows happen in all 50 states and across the globe. I do not know of one market segment that does not have a trade show, including the promotional products industry, which has over 100 different trade shows each year. So I want to thank you for listening to me and being part of this program. So Carrie, what's next?
Thanks, Bob. I think it's fair to say none of us really expected your year as chair to go this way, right? This has been just completely different than any of us thought. So thank you so much for your leadership. I really appreciate that. You mentioned Exhibitions Day. It's one of my favorite days of the year. I've been every single year. And we want to know how many folks in the audience right now have attended Exhibitions Day. So Stacy, I'll have you take over the poll here and we'll see where things stand. So answer this question, folks who are attending right now for us. Have you attended Exhibitions Day? Never. Have you attended 1 or 2 times, 3 or 4 times, 5 times, or more than 5 times if you're a diehard? I always call it an adult field trip. It's just an incredible experience to be able to connect with our legislators. Stacy, let us know when we have some results coming in.
Will do. We have about 80% voting already, so that's great. So I will give it about 15 more seconds, and then I'll go ahead and close it out and share the results with you.
Sounds good. We're going to be talking a lot about Exhibitions Day and the actual issues that we tackled specifically this year and how they've changed. So throughout this webinar, you'll be hearing a lot about Exhibitions Day, what worked, and what we're going to be doing for the future. Wow, look at that. So that means there's a lot of potential for next year. So I'm glad to see that we have some new folks here who are interested in advocacy and interested in Exhibitions Mean Business, but have not actually been to Exhibitions Day. So it's usually the first week of June. And again, we had to have it this year virtually, but what that allowed us to do was really to go from about 125 folks who are normally physically on Capitol Hill to more than 600 people that attended this year virtually. So we want to tell you a little bit about some of the successes and what we've been able to do in the past with Exhibitions Day. We meet one-on-one with members of Congress. And in the past, one thing that really worked well, those of you out listening may know Mark Bogdansky or Jessica Finnerty from Apex. They met with their representative in Nevada, Representative Dina Titus, and invited her to Apex, which is a trade show in the automotive aftermarket industry. And she came to the show floor. She's been more than once. So that is an incredible way to connect with representatives and let them see the business that's being done on our show floors face to face. So that was a really, really big success. We were excited about that. And then we have another success story to tell you about this year, as a matter of fact. Mark Taylor from Apogee Exhibits attended Virtual Exhibitions Day, sent out emails to his representatives in DC, and was then asked to participate in a town hall with Senator Chuck Schumer, and the local media was there. So we want to show you the story that the media did on Mark and his meeting with Chuck Schumer. Stacy, can you play the video for us, please?
Small businesses impacted by COVID about to lose government help to pay their employees.
In 4 weeks, when our money runs out, we're not going to be at 100% capacity.
The payroll protection program, extended once already, runs out next month just as many businesses continue to struggle with COVID shutdowns. Good afternoon, I'm Tanner Jubinville in for Doug.
And I'm Jenny Ryan. In the next 2 weeks, lawmakers will debate an extension, and it's likely to come with some major changes. As 13 WAM's Jane Flash tells us, those changes are meant to focus on small businesses. Jane?
Well, that PPP program has been criticized for handouts to big businesses with hundreds of employees. Senator Chuck Schumer says this time around will be different. 25 employees at Apogee Exhibits in Macedon help customers plan and execute events. Then COVID canceled most of them.
We've suffered from nearly a complete shutdown and 100% loss of revenues in our industry since about the middle of March.
Newly opened, the Union Tavern had few resources to stay open. The Paycheck Protection Program has allowed the paychecks to keep coming for 15 employees and for a low-interest loan for other expenses.
We're so grateful that we have it, but now we're nearing the end of it. So as soon as we use that up, we have nothing else to go for.
The small business program offered payroll protection for 8 weeks. It's been extended by a month, but COVID continues to leave businesses operating at a restricted capacity, a situation that could stretch on until the end of the year. Senator Schumer says there's money left over, $130 billion from the last round of PPP.
The money is there. We just have to change the law to let folks like this get a second round. This program we're talking about only goes to businesses under 100 people.
57,000 small businesses in Rochester and the Finger Lakes would qualify for the extension. The money does not have to be paid back as long as all jobs are held for the duration of the program.
It's very important for us to be able to manage through this recovery, receive more help.
Now, the extension of the payroll protection is called P4. Again, it is only for small businesses and excludes publicly traded companies. It's part of that COVID bill that will land before the Senate sometime in the next 2 weeks. In the newsroom, I'm Jane Flash.
So we want to talk a little bit about that being such a big success, because as we talk about exhibitions meaning business and how important that is, it's important to reach the legislators like Mark did, and also reach the general public so that people know about our industry and the need for it. We're going to talk a little bit specifically about the legislation and PPP coming up. But first, we want to turn things over to David now to talk a little bit on how far we've come during COVID-19 and what the Exhibitions Mean Business campaign has been doing. So, David.
Thank you, Carrie and Bob. What we might consider is changing the bylaws so you can be chair for another year. We wouldn't mind that at all. But then Carrie would have to kind of take it easy for a year, right?
I can wait.
Carrie will never take it easy. Well, let me talk a little bit about COVID and our response since mid-February, early March. Kathy Breeden and I have had more than 70 interviews about the state of the industry in such media outlets as BBC, Bloomberg, MSNBC, New York Times, LA Times, etc. And so obviously we have, as part of our Exhibitions Mean Business programming, a public relations media outreach program that Nicole Bowman and the team advocate and push and manage for us on a daily basis. Collaboration is a key. We at IAEE and EMB have worked closely with many organizations, U.S. Travel Association, Events Industry Council, Meetings Mean Business Coalition, and then you'll hear some more about Go Live together in a few moments as well. But over the years, our entire raison d'etre in EMB is to collaborate. We have over 25 supporting organizations that have been with us for the last 7 and 8 years, especially for Exhibitions Day, where we have, as you heard from Carrie, we had a 6-fold increase in participation this year. And my goodness, it'll probably be the first week in June again next year, Carrie, and I know it's already on your calendar to block the whole week off, so we'll need you there. But you know, wouldn't it be great to have 600 to 800 to 1,000 ladies and gentlemen on the Hill next year? So let's hope, fingers crossed, God willing, and COVID minimizes itself, that we can do that in person. The social media impact of that event, Exhibitions Day, resulted in over 2.8 million Twitter impressions, which represents more than 745,000 people. The key takeaways was certainly separate meetings and events that we want to kind of carve out from mass gatherings, because when you think about mass gatherings, you think about you know, going to an arena, for example, or going to an indoor festival of some kind where you have 10, 15,000 people. We can control the flow in a trade show, and I won't get into that because that's preaching to the choir. We all know that. So obviously the other takeaway from Exhibitions Day is immediate financial relief. So as I mentioned before, we're going to continue to move in this direction, and I want to let you know that as you learn more about Go Live Together, which was created several months ago in a very collaborative way, I want you to know that that is meant to be short-lived. That is meant to be a very valuable, important coalition to get us focused. And we've hired a lobbying firm in Washington, D.C. to help us with all of these issues, what Roger will talk about in a few moments. But Exhibitions Mean Business has been around 8 years. We'll be around many, many years going forward, Carrie. So that's kind of my thoughts as we set up the rest of the conversation.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's important to know that Exhibitions Mean Business, this is a campaign that's about the long game. This is about building relationships, and we really tried to do that during the virtual exhibitions day, where right there during that event, virtually, we had people emailing, tweeting, posting on social media so that we could share this information. So I feel like we really are making a difference, and we're definitely getting out there and getting the word out. So we want to ask another poll question. We want to know if your company or organization is engaged in advocacy initiatives. So I'll turn things over to Stacy real quick, but this is a pretty simple yes, no, or I don't know. Before we go into what the Reed Exhibitions organization is doing, we kind of wanted to get a feel for you all out there in the audience. So if you could answer this quick poll for us, it's a pretty simple one. Stacy, let us know when we've got some results in, and we'll see what the answers are. Are you there, Stacy?
Yep, I'm here, just watching the votes coming in.
Cool. We do have more than 200 attendees, so that's pretty exciting. That really is inspiring to me and energizing to me that many folks want to know about the advocacy efforts, because I think it's so important.
Okay, we're going to give it about 10 more seconds if everyone can get your vote in. I'm going to close it out. And here are the results.
So 60% yes and about 23% no. That's actually encouraging. And my guess is that post-COVID, since the beginning of COVID rather, that most companies have started tackling advocacy because this is such an important need. I mean, I think this piece of what we do is now becoming part of our daily lives, which is why these initiatives are so important. All right, thank you guys for voting. We appreciate you staying connected. Up next, we want to turn things over to Marie Brown from Reed Exhibitions, and we want to hear what Reed is doing from a legislative standpoint and how important it is to get these legislative programs extended and funded. Marie.
Thanks, Carrie. Well, actually, that was a very encouraging statistic. I'm glad to see so many people have advocacy efforts on the agenda. So we at Reed are looking forward to holding face-to-face events again, and there are a lot of people doing a lot of good work to make this happen and make it happen safely. So for those of you who are not familiar, Reed Exhibitions is part of the Relics Group. We're extremely fortunate to have a government affairs department. The department employs about 35 people globally and is led by Steve Manzo, who is our VP of Government Affairs. He and his team are working closely with the Go Live Together coalition, which I think David mentioned earlier. They have been very busy. They're participating in virtual meetings with the House and Senate to solicit support for the coalition's legislative agenda. So we've taken a two-pronged advocacy strategy on the state and local level and the federal level. At the state and local level, our focus has been on governors' offices in key states to distinguish trade shows and other business events from other mass gatherings, as David had mentioned, as it relates to state reopening plans. And Steve and his team have been working very closely with Go Live Together to share intelligence and to advocate for the reopening of trade shows in key states. And for us, that includes Illinois, New York, California, and Florida. And at the federal level, our focus has been on securing government support to help accelerate the recovery of the trade show industry post-COVID. So the coalition's top priority is to secure a business tax credit to encourage attendee and exhibitor participation at trade shows and other business events. The tax credit would cover 50% of qualified expenses incurred in the US up to a maximum of $50,000 per company per year. And up to $10,000 per individual per year. So as was said earlier, I mean, collaboration has been very important and valuable. It's not just about one company, it's about the entire industry. And working with a broad-based industry coalition like Go Live Together has allowed us to achieve a much broader reach.
That's a great point, and we appreciate everything that Reed Exhibitions is doing as well. And I think, Marie, we would just want to emphasize that collaboration point, right? I want to make sure that the audience knows they can ask questions. You can ask questions of any individual panelist or of the panel in general, and we'll make sure to get an answer for you. So feel free to type in your questions. Marie mentioned some of Go Live Together and some of that collaboration. David, let me turn it over to you to talk about some of these agreements and collaborations between all these groups.
Thank you. As I mentioned, obviously over the years, we've forged alliances with many different organizations. And just today, an outreach was sent to all of our US members, encouraging you to respond to and lobby for the American Society of Associations Executives request for PPP. 75% of our show organizer member organizations are associations. Most of them are C6. So Carrie, wouldn't it be great to have some additional funds available to support the efforts of associations to help support their staffing, to help them relaunch their trade shows and their meetings and business events. And right here at IAEE, if this gets included, as Bob knows, being our chair, and Carrie knows as having been the treasurer last year, we could use some additional money ourselves. So we're a C6. So we're very selfishly advocating on behalf of not just IAEE, but everybody who's our members. So obviously, as you can see on the slide, working with Go Live Together, which is, please go to golivetogether.com, sign up, it's free. I think there's over 2,500 individuals already activated, and you'll see, I think it's at least 100 logos of various supporting organizations on their website. And obviously, it's critical that we continue to focus on the good legislative issues that Marie mentioned, and certainly Roger's going to get into more detail now.
Yeah, I think that's where we want to head to next. Really, one of the things that is really key here is making sure that everybody knows what the asks are to Congress, what the asks are to the members. And so we want to turn things over to Roger Rickert for a moment. So Roger, catch us up on the legislative updates and where some of these bills stand in the House and the Senate.
Well, Carrie, thank you very much. And naturally, we have priorities. And if of all years of being involved and engaged in Exhibitions Day, we are really focused on continuing to move the ball, not just that one day, but by forging the relationships that we have forged, and by building new relationships, we can continue to move forward throughout the year. So I want to review a couple of the things, and it may be a little bit difficult to see on the slide. I'm not really sure for you, but I'm going to review the top five legislative priorities we have. But you can find those by going to exhibitionsmeanbusiness.org, and you'll be able to see those top five priorities. They're under the Issues tab. The first one is incentivize a safe restart of the exhibitions, meetings, and events economy. Now, of course, we know we need to restart, but it has to be safe. So how do we go about that? Partially by creating that temporary travel tax credit that will enable people to use those tax credits, as Maria brought up, that Reed is working with, and allow businesses to fully deduct the food and entertainment expenses. Also provide tax breaks for personal protection, the PPP or PPE, the personal protective equipment, and any sterilization of facilities, and any type of tax measures that would help revitalize the U.S. trade show and exhibition industry. And that's that first one that's kind of in that gold category up there. The second one is to extend and enhance economic relief. Now, these priorities, I might want to say to you, is they're generic, because I will explain what's going on in Congress as we go further. And you'll get a better understanding of why these priorities are listed generically before we get into actual some bills that we're supporting. So number two there, extend and enhance economic relief. We need the destination marketing organizations, our partners in being able to put on exhibitions, trade shows, and meetings, we need them to be able to receive that, the SBA PPP, the Paycheck Protection Programs, the loans, increase the maximum amount of the loans. You saw in the video that the minority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, was talking about making sure that it got to the right hands with the money that was available, extending it and allowing it to get into hands that haven't been reached yet. So we are fully in favor of those type of things. And that would include anything along the lines of the Paycheck Protection Program for 501c6s as well. And then number 3 there is support community-based economic recovery, provide $10 billion in Economic Development Administration grants for DMOs and the small businesses in the destinations that will enable us when the exhibitions and trade shows come to town, that they will be there to be able to support all of our efforts, because we know that, it sounds corny, but it takes a village to be able to put on our events and the exhibitions, and we need that support from all those other additional small businesses. Number 4 is protect businesses that protect public health. If we're doing all the right things, if we're providing the safe harbor, if we're enacting all the safe protocols, then we need those businesses to be protected from liability. And I'll get into that a little bit more with a specific bill as we go along. And then finally, enable safe and healthy economic activity. You know, we need to get back to getting the economy moving. And we know that COVID has affected us in such a way, but it's more than just COVID. It's also been the economic downturn and the shutdown that has affected us. So,
which is really the message, right, Roger? I know that's the most important thing there, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So our message, as you can read on the screen here, in these extraordinary financial times, it is critical that the federal government use whatever fiscal means they have at their disposal to prop up the economy. By propping up the overall economy, you're going to have the effect of helping us as well. But we need to see everybody back in the game. And that lack of investment, it's costing us jobs. We know that, not only in the revenue, but in jobs, and it's prolonging the recovery process. So in general, anytime you have an opportunity to talk to any policymaker, we want to reiterate this point that we have to get back and have to get moving, and that we need more funds to be able to facilitate that happening. So let's move on, Carrie, and get into some specific legislation.
Yep.
This is HR 6800, and you may have heard it discussed quite a bit in the news. It's called the HEROES Act. It stands for Health and Economic Recovery Omnibus Emergency Solutions Act. That's a mouthful. But it passed the House in June, and the bill moved on to the Senate. I bring this up because there are many things in that bill that we fully support, things that we've kind of listed as our priorities. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over this one because, quite frankly, we have been told that it's dead in the Senate and that it's not going to go anywhere. That doesn't mean it wasn't worth fighting for. It is. And it doesn't mean that the provisions that help us in this bill are not the things that we're going to continue to fight for, because there will be, even Chuck Schumer, the minority leader in the Senate, the Democrat, had indicated that there will be P4, the stimulus for the pandemic, number 4. So there will be provisions that will be a part of this. But you can easily go look any of these bills up by going to congress.gov, and you can learn more about all the specifics, including the bill language there. So as we move on to the next bill that we have supported, and that is the Local Chamber Tourism 501c6 Protection Act. Now, David talked about that a little bit earlier. That's HR 6697, and it's going to amend it to expand the PPP to the other businesses and organizations and assist in the economic recovery. I want to share some really good news about this, because on Exhibitions Day in early June, when we gathered virtually and we asked you to go out and reach out to these policymakers, you did, and you've made a difference. So we thank you for that, because the status, it was introduced in May. It's referred to the House Committee on Small Business. It's being discussed. It has 119 co-sponsors. Now, why is that important? First of all, because the more co-sponsors you get, the more belief and faith that leadership in the House has that this bill can actually go somewhere. So it's important to try to get people to co-sponsor early on so that the bill gains the momentum to be heard. And of those 119 sponsors, we helped secure 10 additional ones, because if you go and you track it, days after Exhibitions Day, we picked up 10 more co-sponsors. And we know that we were pushing very hard on that, and that we were the group of people that was out there pushing that at that time. So congratulations to those of you that participated this year. And if you didn't, where were you? We need you. We need you to be a part of it now. So with that, let's move on. This will move on to the Senate. And then there's Senate 3992. Now, this one doesn't really have a technical name, but it's also a bill that will do the same kind of thing. Chambers of Commerce, the DMOs, it will do the same, primarily the same thing. It's almost a completely similar bill than the one I just mentioned that's in the House. It was introduced in June. It's not gained as much momentum at this point. As you can see, it only has 3 co-sponsors. So one of the things that we always ask for is, what can you do? So take Senate 3992 and make sure that you reach out to your members of Congress, your member of the House of Representatives, and your 2 US senators, and ask them to support the type of language that exists in this bill. Now, it's key to reach the 2 senators' offices, and we've got some tools that can help you achieve that as we go forward. I think there's one more, Carrie, that we want to go over. And that,
I jumped ahead. This one's 3814, Restart Act.
Yes, 3814, and this is the Restart Act. And this is all part of what Go Live Together and that larger coalition that's been created is working on to achieve. And that's economic stability towards a recovery. Now, it's been introduced in May. It's been referred to the Senate Finance Committee. But the good thing is, if they take the time in subcommittees to hold hearings, they believe it has a valuable place in the process. And hearings have been held on this, and there are 11 co-sponsors, and this is bipartisan. So that's a good thing in being able to move anything forward as we get into all the language and machinations, if you will, of the legislative cycle.
And Roger, we have a question that I wanted to insert here because I think it's really important, especially as we talk about these House and Senate bills. We have a question of, how can I find out if my senator or my representative is already a co-sponsor? How do I find that out? Can you tell folks how to get that information?
I don't know who asked that, but thank you for asking. That's a great question. So you can always go to congress.gov, G-O-V, and at the top, there's a search bar. Type in the bill number, but you have to include either HR for the House bill or S for the Senate bill and the number, and then it will sort it. You'll click on it, and you'll be able to see the co-sponsors that are active right now.
Cool.
And there's a spot there. It's really self-explanatory, but please go ahead and go there and check. And let me give you another advocacy little tip here, that if you do that and you find that your US Senator has already co-sponsored it, well then do us all a favor and yourself a favor and write them a little note, in email or on Twitter or on their Facebook saying, I see you co-sponsored S, fill in the blank, or HR, fill in the blank. I thank you for that. Our industry needs that support. Thank them when they have co-sponsored. And if they haven't yet, then let's ask them to be a part of it, that it will help our industry. So under legislative considerations, I wanted to kind of leave this as just the image, because there's a number of things that I want to make everybody aware of. And I probably should start that we are in a very dramatic time when it comes to the federal legislation. I don't think that's a secret to most of us that follow this at all, but there are a tremendous amount of political dynamics that are happening right now. First of all, the pandemic. Second, the economic disaster. Third, the massive unemployment. Fourth, the presidential election year. And there's also very key Senate races this year and House race. Everybody in the House, all 435 members, are up for re-election. Well, why should that matter? Well, of course it matters, because right now, the last I looked, just since the pandemic began, there are over 700 bills that have been written to address some form or fashion of the pandemic. I want to repeat that because it's a really key point. Wow. Over 700 bills. So chasing those, tracking those down. So it's incumbent upon us to be able to form these much larger coalitions so that we can share the resources, join together to make that an effective way of cutting through all of this. Then you got to figure out, okay, what's the political battle? Who needs to achieve what? And we learned early on that the Senate was probably not going to address the next form of any type of stimulus package until the end of July. There's some reasons for that. One, that gives them the ability, they've been home, they return next week. Now they can come back and say, we heard from our constituents and we need to do all this. And now they can be the white stallion, get on top of the white stallion and ride into town and save the day. The same with the president can position himself, and the administration can position himself that way. So there will be things that will take place, but it is incumbent upon us to allow our voice to be heard, because every day on news reports, we're seeing everybody else needing money as well.
Yeah.
And we have to have our voice heard in this, Carrie. So it's important for us to do that. So both the Senate and the House are coming back in next week, but you need to know they're not going to be in very long. The Senate will be in session until September 8th. The House will be in session until July 31st, and they're not coming back after those until after Labor Day. So they've got about a week and a half, 2-week window here to get an awful lot done in a very complex environment. So there's going to be a lot of political machinations going on.
Roger, I want to give you an update. Sue McCart tells us that the Georgia senators have received her request to co-sign 3992. Sue's one of our EMB ambassadors, for those of you who don't know her. And so we are hoping that they will sign on as co-sponsors. And so it's that kind of outreach, just like you're talking about, that makes such a difference and builds those relationships.
You know, and it's a great example. And I know that we didn't really get a chance to address it, but one of the things that's really important for us is the Pandemic Risk Insurance Act. It's called PRIA. Now, there are multiple bills out there And we've gotten some really interesting indications. The House bills that were written for this, and I'm not going to share the numbers, and I'll tell you why in a second. The House bills that have been written have all been supported by the Democrats, which is great. But in conversations with McConnell as the majority leader on the Republican side in the Senate, he has come out in writing in favor of creating this liability protection for us. So now you have Democrats in the House, you have Republicans in the Senate that are saying this is needed. And why I didn't want to share a House bill number is because there's going to be new bills written because there's been some technical glitches with some of the other bills. So let's clean it all up, put it together, and it may be part of the stimulus package, or it may stand alone as well. Our issues need you as champions.
I agree with that.
I gave you a great example of what Sue's done. I know others on this call have done great work and heavy lifting to try to help it out, but we need every single voice. And if you think we're alone, I'm going to close this segment with this. We recently, AHLA, the American Hotel and Lodging Association, that has been a part of the EMB coalition from day one, hired a Morning Consult, a very well-known, nationally respected polling agency, to do a national poll. And they ask specific questions that can affect our industry. And after setting up each question, they would answer. And here's a couple of those results. And this is to the average American. Would you support or oppose Congress passing an additional economic stimulus package for sectors that have seen a significant drop in revenue, such as the travel and hospitality industry, as we fit under the umbrella of people traveling to go to our events? 70% of average Americans support additional stimulus for our industry.
That's encouraging.
That is incredibly powerful numbers. Anytime you get over the 6 number and into the 60s, you know you've got a great amount of support. 2 more quick questions. Would you support or oppose a new temporary federal travel tax credit to encourage people to travel again? 61% approve that. Right. And there will be, there's currently a bill out there, but there's going to be another bill that's going to come out that's going to kind of clean things up again, because they've been moving at breakneck speed. Yep. So look for that bill to come out shortly. And the third and final question is, would you support or oppose restoring the business entertainment expense deduction, the meals and business deductibility, to encourage business travel? 57% agree with that.
Also encouraging.
And that's one of those 5 priorities that we started this whole segment off with that we need to have happen. So yes, it is very encouraging, Carrie, and I'd love to hear any other comments about that.
Well, I know that that is something super important to most Americans. And the other thing that we're hearing so much about are the unemployment benefits, right? We actually have a direct question about that. And this may be for Marie and or David, because I know there are so many people in this industry who are looking to unemployment to help them right now, and on COBRA. The question is, thank you for all you do, which we appreciate that. And then any plans for Exhibitions Mean Business to lobby to extend the enhanced unemployment benefits past the July 31 deadline? David or Marie, either one of you want to weigh in on the importance or the need for that?
Ladies first, otherwise I'll take it. Well,
go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Marie. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Yes, it's all part of our conversations. Every Friday, we have about 3 hours of conversations, Carrie, with Brownstein, who is our lobbying firm in DC. We continue almost every week, as Roger said, to go through the priorities, outline them, and certainly there's 2 sides to the argument about extending this $600 a week unemployment benefit. One is some of our members are saying that just a member told me yesterday that he made an offer to a lady who is highly qualified for the position he had open, and she turned him down because she said, I'm going to take my chances that I can get $600 extra a week out of unemployment. And so she's rolling the dice. So that's one side of the equation. The other is there's conversation, and I know, Roger, you and I talked about it the other day, that on the D side, there's a push, and on the R side, there's a pull, typical, right? Push and pull. A conversation, Carrie, about maybe they extend that program, but it's not $600 a week. Maybe it's $300 a week. So we all know that everybody who's unemployed, and these jobs in our industry are not going to come back right away. We need maybe a consideration and a negotiation that compromises and continues the program. So the answer to the question is yes, we still are lobbying for some level of relief.
Well, and I think it's also important, this is a good time, oops, sorry, Roger, just to remind everyone that we are sending out, and they come from David, action alerts. And so when there is something that we are asking folks to specifically do as a part of this advocacy, we're labeling them action alert, and everybody needs to be on the lookout for that, right?
Yeah, Carrie, that's a really good point. They will be coming out. We need you to respond when that happens, because that's how we reach these policymakers. You know, David made a really good point. The tug and the pull between the D's and the R's of what to do and how to do it. Politics is all about positioning. And so prior to leaving, to go back to the district and to meet with people locally in their districts, senators were saying, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to make this happen. Now they can come back and then they can say, listen, we know there's more pain. I think that they were hoping that the unemployment claims would drop. And I think they were hoping that people were going to get reemployed at a higher rate. And while we saw 1 week of reemployment show up, every other week there had been an additional drop of at least 1.5 million jobs. They know they have to address that. And if they don't address that, and there's a large group of people unemployed when the ballots start arriving, they're in trouble. And so they will address it in some form. I don't think it'll be at the same level as David indicated that is currently supported by the feds.
It's pretty incredible. I can tell you at CNTV, we are hiring. We posted several jobs, but one in particular we posted over the weekend, and within 24 hours, we had more than 100 applicants. I mean, that's just one example of how many people are out of work, which just goes to the importance of all of this. We want to move on just a bit because we want to make sure that we really focus on what folks who are listening right now can do. So we've talked a lot about different issues. We've talked about specific bills. I know sometimes the numbers can be hard to remember and things do change. So it's really important that you make sure you know which issues are key, right? So all of this is updated on a regular basis. Nicole Bowman does a great job of keeping the EMB website up to date. So make sure you check out the Exhibitions Mean Business website. You'll know about all the individual issues. Also, that will keep you posted on what's happening with the bills. You know, you heard about the HEROES Act. We were pushing for that in the House, and then it was dead in the Senate. This is, you know, we always say back to the ABC Schoolhouse Rock, this is how politics works. This is how things get done. So you need to also make sure that your voice is heard. There are a lot of ways you can do that. The action emails that come out, it takes less than 2 or 3 minutes to do this sometimes. It's a tweet. Tag your representative or your senator. Send a quick email. Tag them on Facebook. I actually follow our representatives on Facebook, and so I'm seeing them. And when I like their page or I comment on their page, then there's interaction there. So I encourage all of you to do that. And watch the videos created by CNTV on how to be an effective advocate. Those are also on the website, and they kind of really walk through the specific things, especially if you're new to this. I know the first time I went to Capitol Hill, I was scared to death. I had no idea what was involved with advocating for this industry. I just knew that I had a passion for it. And I think that's why we get so many people attending these webinars, because there's that passion So you need to know what to do, and we're here to help, and we're here to keep it pretty simple. So one more quick question for a poll before we wrap up. How likely are you to be more involved in advocacy moving forward? This question, as we were working on this, really came up post-COVID. So really the question is, now that we're in this pandemic, now that we're in this situation, how likely are you to be more involved than perhaps you were in the past? So Stacy, I'll let you take over the reins here and make that poll question interactive. So please let us know, are you very likely, are you somewhat likely, or are you not likely, meaning you would have the same amount of advocacy? We're always looking for ways to improve. We're always looking for more issues to tackle. So we want to hear from you and to find out. I think specifically for me, I've always been an advocate, but this pandemic has definitely led me to even more action and really taking action, not just reading something in my email and letting it go by, because it has such an impact on our industry. Stacy, how are we doing on the answer to this one?
We have about 60% voting. It's the end of the day, so maybe people are reacting a little bit slower.
Almost happy hour, folks. It's almost happy hour.
So I'll give it about 15 more seconds and then I'll close out.
Okay. And as soon as we're done with this poll, just so everyone knows what's going to happen, if we have any more questions, we can take those. And we also want to make sure to save just a moment to let everyone get sort of their final thoughts. Maybe one last thought on why advocacy is so important. So I'll ask each panelist to do that. Okay, so somewhat likely and very likely. I actually think these numbers are pretty high. I think all of us are feeling the pinch. We're feeling how important it is that our own representatives, I'm in Florida, so our own Florida representatives or my local representatives, how important it is for them to understand our industry. So I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by this and excited that there's a lot of potential for that. So thank you for participating in our poll here and participating overall. We're going to jump right ahead. Before we do the Q&A though, let's go ahead and go to some final thoughts. How about we start with Bob? Bob, we haven't heard from you since the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your final thoughts on advocacy and exhibitions mean business.
Great, thank you. You guys have done a tremendous job. I've learned a lot just listening to you. So thank you very much, Roger, Marie, Carrie, great job moderating, and David for your leadership. So one of the things I want to point out, I noticed in the poll we did that 58% of our respondents said that they already had an advocacy program. And keep in mind that for many of us 501c6s, trade shows are our lifeblood, right? So PPAI, we have an advocacy program that supports the promotional products industry. What we need to do is think outside of our own industry and remember how important trade shows are to our business. It's not specifically a promotional product industry, although a ton of promotional products are handed out during trade shows, but we need to branch out and make sure that we're supporting the trade show industry as well as our own industry. So I would encourage those of you that have an advocacy program, but don't forget to support trade show legislation.
That's great. I agree 100%. David, you're up next.
Well, thank you. I can age myself and Roger. Well over 20 years ago, we were involved with MPI, Meeting Professionals International, and what Roger back then was called MILAD, Meetings Industry Legislative Action Day. And 8 years ago, I connected with Roger and I said, hey, I want to take this concept to the board. And back then, Bob and Carrie and Marie, all board members now, the board immediately embraced it. And I remember one thing the little guy with the bow tie said to me and continues to say to all of us, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Exhibitions mean business started 8 years ago. It will be around well past my retirement age, which Bob is at least, what, 10 more years? But my point is that let's keep going. Go Live Together is an outstanding short-term and very valuable coalition that we will continue to support, but please get involved at whatever level you can.
Thank you so much, David. I agree with all of that. Marie, up next. I know Reed Exhibitions is making a lot of headway in terms of legislative efforts. Tell us your final thoughts here. Oh, I think you're on mute.
See, something I'm learning. Okay, sorry about that. So quick final thought, I'm going to steal it from, I did ask Steve Manzo to help me with this. I said, you know, what can I ask the audience to do? And I think he had some good advice. He basically said, you know, if you can let any of us know on this panel and we'll get, you know, you to the right person. If you have any relationships with any elected officials that might be helpful in our advocacy efforts, please do let us know. Again, you know, we're all in this together. And also, you know, if you're a small business or you work with a small business, you know, you or they should really get in touch with elected officials and let them know that you or they depend on trade shows to market their products or your products.
That's such an important point. And I think all of us can tell all of our friends and family that, right, too. Anybody that's involved in a small business can help us spread the word. It doesn't just have to be us in the industry. It can be those impacted by the industry as well. Roger, exactly. A final thought.
Yeah, you know, people in this industry are not shy. They're extroverts. And with that, you've got to do what you do best. And that is get out and take what Marie said and the advice about building those relationships with policymakers. You know, this isn't a new thing, but it is the long-term thing to do. Day in and day out, build those relationships, and tying that together to another thing that Marie said. You know, every single congressional district has those businesses, and particularly small businesses, that rely on the marketing vehicle of exhibitions and events to buy and sell their goods and services. And if they can't do that, we're going to never stimulate the economy.
I agree. That's a good point. And I think for me, it's just to continue to take the passion that you have for this industry and the people in this industry and to turn that into action. Don't assume that someone else is going to do it for you. It just takes a tweet, it takes an email, it takes a phone call, and it makes a difference. These decisions are being made by real people who are influenced by people like us. So turn your passion into action, I think would be my final thought. So I want to thank Bob, David, Marie, Roger. Thank you all for being here. And for all of you attendees, thank you so much. It really is energizing to know that so many people care about advocacy and care about this industry. I want to remind you there will be an evaluation and a survey, so please fill that out. That helps IAEE know what topics to do and how we're doing on these webinars. So please take the time to fill that out. And this particular webinar was recorded and will be in the EMB microsite, so you can always watch it again. So for all of us here on the panel, thanks so much. I'm Carrie Farinack with CNTV, and we'll see you next time.